Our drawing for this year is going to begin with a question. How do we see? Some people might say our eyes. Others might say our brain. Our eyes and our brain do work together to help us see the world around us. But there is one piece of that puzzle missing, and that piece is light. In a completely dark room, can you see anything? Like pitch black? The answer is no. What do you need then in order to see? Light. Our eyes are built to see because light is around. Our eyes perceive the light, and then they communicate it with our brain, and we see the world around us. Let's take a look at this object. It is well lit. Don't you agree? So, I want you to identify the brightest spot. Which part of this shape is the brightest? Probably right along here, right? Well, not while my finger is giving it a shadow. That brightest spot is called the highlight. Say it with me. Highlight. Now I want you to look for the object's shadow. Let's not get confused. This is the object's shadow because the light source is coming from this way and it's casting this shadow on the paper. What I'm talking about can be this, but it's also this. See this darker side? There's less light on the object over here. And in art, we call that a shadow. So we have our highlight and our shadow. This is also a shadow zone where we would use, we would call it a shadow. Now, before we keep going, there are areas on this object that are not highlight, and they are also not shadow. Those are the middle areas. So kind of right here, it's changing from highlight to shadow. There's some here. And then also the top, it's not really bright like the highlight, and it's not dark like the shadow. The middle areas of lightness are called midtones, like middle, right? Midtones. So we have found the highlight, we found the shadow, and we found midtones. In art, we call these things value. So we could ask someone, what's the value of the top of the shape? Oh, that's a midtone value. Over here is a highlight. Over here is a shadow. These are values. Now, what if we wanted to draw this? What is drawing? Drawing is recording the highlight, midtone, and shadow that we can see. In drawing all these things, are called value. Now, I want you guys to understand that the more you practice seeing things like the mid-tone, the highlight, and the shadow here, the more you practice seeing, the better you will get at drawing. It gets easier and easier to draw what you see. Now let's change here. I want you guys, grab your handout. It says Lesson 1, Introduction to Value. And on the bottom, we have these pictures of trees. Look at the green tree on your handout, or on the one in front of you. Count how many greens are on the green tree. There are 3 different shades of green on this tree. Now, let's change over to the black and white one. How many values make up, well, let me explain actually. We're taking the green and brown away. out of our thinking for now. And when we look at the tree in black and white, it actually becomes easier for our brains to distinguish value. If we take out color, it's easier to see the values. Those are highlights, midtones, and shadows. So, how many values are used to make up this whole image with not the green, just the black and white? How many values are there? There are 3 values. Let's find them together. Let's start with the shadows. So the shadows are going to be the darkest areas. The trunk is definitely a shadow, right? And then I see the bottom of these leaf areas are also very, very dark, same as the trunk. So those are all of the shadow areas. Now let's move to highlights. Highlights are going to be the lightest areas. I see that the grass is very light all around here. And then also we have a couple pieces of bright areas of leaves here, here, and here. So those are all the highlights. Now, midtones are the tones that are, I shouldn't say tones. Midtones are the values that are not the shadow or the highlight. Midtone, 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 and midtone. Now that we've discussed values, the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows, I actually want you guys to fill in the values to the tree yourself with crayons. I want you to be sure to follow the numbers. This is a color by number exercise that will help you as you start to block in values and understand highlights, midtones, and shadows. Start dark with the number 3. All of the areas that need to be shadow will be black. And then you will move to number 2. Number 2 represents the midtone areas. Color those a medium gray. Then move on to your highlights. The number 1 areas are the highlight, and use light gray on these. If you don't have a light gray, use your regular gray crayon and just use very light pressure. That means don't push very hard. And then when you're done, your handout of a tree should closely resemble this black and white one. Remember, for lesson 1, we have discussed that our eyes see light, and drawing is recording the lights and the darks that we see. The more you practice seeing lights, darks, I should say highlights, shadows, and midtones, the easier it gets to draw what you see.